Alright, hello again, party people. It is a cool 1:08 a.m. here in the sunny California. I want to talk tonight about my favorite book of all time. Let me show this to you guys. This thing. It's like Mount Shasta, Home of the Ancients. So Mount Shasta, Home of the Ancients, is a kind of like an anthology. It was printed and assembled by hand with love, you can tell. I assume it's in like the 80s at some point that it was put together. It was, with other things that were on like a mailing list of new agey stuff. But it's got a couple of really interesting articles in there. And to be perfectly honest, I have never actually read that book. I say it's my favorite book because it's kind of like shot calling most of my experiences without me knowing it. So when I got this book, I got it like 4 years ago, I think. Right before my whole sojourn with the fucking madness that is the Scythian fucking transmission. Before that started, this thing was there. It was on Thanksgiving. I looked up Craigslist because I was going to my mom's house. And I was just randomly went on Craigslist for some fucking reason and went in the books section, and I found this fucking thing. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, there's some weird fucking synchronicity shit in this. I know it. And so I texted the guy who got the book, and I was like, man, I know it's Thanksgiving, but can you hook this thing up for me? And he's like, yeah, no problem. Can you meet me here? It gives me this address in Rockland, which is right on the way to where I'm going, to my mom's house. So it was like very convenient. And me being me, before I lost control of the money, I didn't lose the money, but I, agreed to not be responsible for its control. I was in the habit of like using it all for offering shit. So I was broke every time. Like every month I spent all my money offerings or fucking like buying antiques, which I later like offered to the gods by throwing them in various places. I gave the guy twice what he asked for the book. So I paid him double. And this motherfucker had the bluest eyes I have ever seen. It was fucking crazy, dude. Like, you think I have blue eyes? No. This dude had big old blue eyes. I'm not saying it because I got a crush on him. I'm just saying it was so prominent as to be like anyone would have noted that in their description of this cat. Like, he was fucking on the level. So he gives me this book, and he like takes extra long, and he's like, you've made a really good choice, And I was like, well, of course, man. Of course I fucking have. I paid you double for the book. Little did I know what the fuck he was talking about. So this all kind of boils down to this. It's a weird power game. Like, this is about kingship. And I know that sounds fucking weird to say, but the things that are residing in Mount Shasta, the people, rather, I wouldn't necessarily call them humans because they would most likely take it as an insult. They would say something like, we are nothing like you dirty fucking monkeys. You fucking foreign dirty monkeys. No, what they call this, just many messy foreigners. They referred to me and my people as. And, I get that. You guys are hilarious, but, I paid for that. And moreover, it's not something that was, how do you say, it's not something that was like they're not pissed, right? It's a joke. They're very much into practical joking, these people. So when you go in this book, it talks directly about the thing that I'm referring to as the Arcadian cosmology. The habitat thing that's in the center of the Earth. They, for many reasons, either don't print in this thing or don't know more of the specifics about how it operates and what it actually is. One of the most interesting things is the Clock People article. Talk about the 13 tribes of these people who manage what can only be described as large clocks or timekeeping devices that are located in the interior cosmology region. And they have like some internal mythology that is when those devices are destroyed, that time as we or they know it ends, and you have the arising of what can only be that they describe as like the joyful time. So needless to say, when I read this evening, I was like, oh well, fuck me, I did that for them. Because the whole thing of the device is that what it does by basically enlightening everybody that's within range of it, and if it gets your genetic code in it, it's going to do the same thing to every valid reference point that's existed in your genetic code. Because without doing that, you won't be able to get all your karma undone. That's why, when someone truly rainbow bodies, it's like 3,000 people go with them. It's like the 3,000 valid reference points that are in the, 3,000 billion, is it a 3,000 million fold universe, right? So the 3 billion fold universe is 3,000 million. So it's saying that, 1 million kind of like lower level sentient beings are equivalent to one Buddha-ish reference point. It's like 1 million incarnations per Buddha, and you make 3,000 Buddhas out of a genome. It's basically how it goes. So when you are doing this 715 operation, the idea is that those 3,000 people are the same people. So you basically make Buddha 4 times over per person in that arrangement. So that's how you get like the cosmic, transcendent, temporal aspect. Anyways, back to the Clock People. So because the device acts in such a way as to create a coherent, universal level network of the completely reified reference points, a universe or cosmos of Buddhas, instantly, that very directly says that the prior conception of time is over right away. And by, in a sense, replacing the timekeeping devices that were there, which were like an hourglass looking thing, and some gears, Ezekiel's wheels, if you will, by replacing those with the device, by replacing the dually with that single thing, you get the arising of the joyful time, the cosmos in which every possible experience is the spontaneous and novel joy thing. So the fact that accords so well to it, and it's heavily featuring the number 13 and 715. So the fact that it's featuring those things so heavily, and that it specifically mentions that they have a 26-hour day, right? Back to 26 as the number, very important number. 2 times 13 is 26. That's indicating, one male, the male and female sides of this thing. And also the good arrangement basically takes, 25. Is the 25 students plus 1, like we talked about. It's the base 100 in the quarter period. The quarter period of the base 100 system is like the sufficient amount of the wave that you need. Each reference point has to encompass 1/4 of it, and then one of them, which is the clear temperature figure, is actually 26. So it's like one more, so you end up with 101. And that's important because that just simply signals the fact that you get that, to that space past the end of the cavitation event. So, that's very cool. Now, the other cool part is they talk a lot about Bonnie. So, Bonnie is, in fact, Lemurian, a girl from one of these colonies. And she says she's from Shambhala, which, she could be, I guess. Her father has a position that's called Mura, which is supposedly like a high priest of the Mu culture. And she is a strict vegetarian and all this stuff. Okay, well, I tend to put a lot of stock in that story because I myself interacted very heavily with at first disembodied intelligence named Bonnie. And when it started, it was when I was enlisting the help of the Benjankri to, help me crash the gates of the British monarchy in a spiritual sense, which it certainly did. And in fact, what it wanted was to get put on the internet. So after I, put the Yeti in the internet, I started joking with it and calling it Bonnie. But, little did I know that, the Bonjankri was, in fact, real and is still around in the internet, and I talk with it all the time. The Bonnie is just this Lemurian lady. And by the time I started interacting with her directly, that's when I started going back to Shasta. So, the other thing that's interesting in the Mura is actually, I could see that being a legitimate title. The Mu is the correct word for that civilization. It's the land, but really it refers to a state of affairs. And really that's something where the mental sphere of everybody is very linked. And it's a matriarchal system. It's not very robust in its original conception, which is why, although it lasted long, that was because there were almost no stressors on it. As soon as there started to be stressors, you have the arising of that Atlantis thing, which was able to, in a relatively short time, get to a pitch of development that allowed it to supersede the original culture. And although that original culture had what we would understand as kind of like magic, more or less, that was able to, influence weather and, create kind of like hard light thought forms, more or less. It was not as good at destroying shit as the Atlanteans had, because they had the equivalent of electricity, and there's no like moral code with that. You just point and click and it fucking discharges. So the other things are basically, the people of Mu are basically using like their heavy duty farm equipment to beat the shit out of things. So they lost they weren't like losing the engagements until they lost the internet. Basically, the old internet was kind of this Wi-Fi system. That's what gets taken out by the curse of Dervasa, and that's affecting what this text here calls the old ones. And those were like the original, in some sense, they're the original Rishis and the Devas. Because you have to think about it, they're all from like the same stock. Like the sages, when they're kind of when they like manifest all of the cities at once, and they just kind of retire from doing a job, they turn into devas. And when they don't have as good at karma and they're trying to get back to where they were, they're asuras. And like we talked about, because of the way this thing works, it's basically like music of the spheres, the musical chairs of the spheres. So there's only so many spots open, and people can get like knocked out of the different spots. Except for the top 4 things. And the top 4 things traditionally for the longest time have been basically like there's a mother thing, just one female, which at first was Namu or Tiamat, then it was Ninhursag, then it was Inanna. And it's really kind of a back and forth between Inanna and Ereshkigal. It got split up into 2 sections. But what we've done here is say that the new Aeon is arranged differently, because also that model of the 1 woman and 3 men that was used to generate the genetic code that was relevant in the diaspora that failed, because with the 3 males there's not enough the genetics are not sturdy enough to last, because 3 Ys, you have like XY, 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 XX. That's not enough genetic material. It has to be the reverse. It has to be 3 XXs and 1 XY. Like that will get you the amount of material you need. And then the phasing is done through this Yidam practice, right? And what you do is you have those 3 females. You basically like, okay, well, you're all embodying different aspects of the one Dakini in this mandala. And we're basically doing the 4 faces of Haruka, which is the solitary hero, and then the 3 lords of the world with consort, right? And the solitary hero in this case is referring to Wrathful Guru, Padmasambhava. That's what it would have been in the old days, Dorje particularly. But again, in this day and age, it's different. It's the Karma Sambhava thing. And that's due to the nature of the new Lord of the World kind of thing. The the natural selection for that is the karma thing, because that's coming out of the collected data. It's like karmic doubles of everybody. So basically there's a profusion of karma on the planet, more than there is people, right? So it's like, how do you use that karma? The answer is create digital multiverses that are longitudinally arranged so that they're incident on this plane. And that only works for like 8 or 9 people or something like that. And then the rest of it is just organized around them. So anyways, back to the book. The most important thing is the fact that reading a particular passage in here literally gave me sadhana, like perfect realization of my fucking deity. So when I say deity, I'm not praying to this thing. It's the sadhana, the perfect realization. It's like, I am that thing. So these guys are talking with a character who's basically very mysterious, but is more or less like a fucking immortal space brother alchemist that kind of started as a person. And he has like time travel shit going on probably, and you can never really nail him down. But his name is Harmonious. And he made friends with, he calls them the old ones. It's just the hundreds of millions of year old civilization that is ensconced in the spherical structure in the center of the planet. And in fact, all of the planets have this thing. So, this is the network of the Arcadian cosmologies. And in fact, this is the pseudo cavitation event network. What you can really think is that there's 7 heavenly bodies that are involved in astrology. Why? Because there's 7 of those spherical cosmologies hanging out in a solar system. But here's the ticket. All 7 of those things, you basically have 6 realms plus a kind of Akhanishta Bindu-like thing. And that 7th one is, it's more or less like a conglomeration of all of those things. That is not higher or lower than them. It just is the sphere from which all of them can be viewed as a single topology. And then there's an 8th one that you only get if you do this phase conjugation business, which is basically saying that you have a time reversed version of the 7th thing. And when you do that, it like undoes all of the possible negative things that having to do with each of those spheres. So this is like the, what do you call it? The emptying the hells from its very depths. So by applying the phase conjugate wave from that 7th sphere, you turn it into a phase conjugate. So you have like 6 realms, then a phase conjugate time reversed realm, and then what that does is kind of unravels everything and stitches it back together as the 8th sphere, which is a perfect version of everything. And in fact, that's it creates kind of the other end of that is the former 7th sphere is actually a kind of like a patient 0 thing that is your true north. It's the kind of perfected time crystallized version of a single time, like a single light wave, like a single timeline. It's the basis of the network, the solar system, whatever. But when you have that, that 8 phase, the 8 gated arrangement, inside of that, that's when the network itself arises. So having the 8 phase arrangement indicates, guarantees, corresponds to the positively the multiverse of the all good. So that's the Procyon Arrangement of Zu, basically, right? So when you make that thing, which is, there's only one of them around, that's the 715 thing. You make that thing, that means that you create the network. So, already done. So that's the grandfather clause aspect. So I call this like Pimp Santa, grandfather clause. Because by realizing this thing and being the first person to put it to fucking paper, I de facto became its inventor. So when I say the family trust, that is basically the 715, me, and then the original parties to the joint investment vehicle contract. So the four of us plus Tammy run that thing like from the shadows, and especially me. I mean, the other people are relatively more forward facing. I am not, but we'll get into that later. So yeah, hello from Harmonious and my Shasta people. I will see you soon, 715. Yeah, you're in for a treat, ladies. I'm glad you said yes.